this cold open? First, we have Hannah dropping poison into a shot glass in the background out of focus. Then this zoom in and reveal of the cruise. And that what Emilio is watching on the monitor is just on the other side of the wall and is in fact just a set. Oh man, the masks, the espionage, the cruise. This is me being objective and not letting nostalgia and the fact that this is probably one of my favorite spy films of all time get in the way. And the first interaction between these two already plants the idea in your mind that there's something more than just a working relationship.
Do we get it?
We got it.
Priorities. And now a title card that honors the 1966 show with the original theme music, but still updates and improves the visuals while boldly showing clips from a movie we haven't even seen yet.
Would you like to watch a movie, Mr. Phelps?
And the three guys in the theater over 65 cheered.
I know him!
JLo has been in the business a long time.
This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
Another staple of the show, but what I really love about this scene is how Jim lights a cigarette to cover the tape self-destructing. Because, you know, smoking on planes used to be a thing. I think most Americans grow up thinking that the Czech Republic just has the one city since we never see anywhere else in movies. Gotta say, the female representation is unusually high for a mid-90s spy thriller. I mean, they're all cannon fodder anyway, but De Palma did something not everyone was doing back then.
Oh, we missed you in Kiev, Jim.
Missed you too, Ethan.
And where'd they put you up this time? The Plaza?
Drake Hotel, Chicago.
You know how I love a cold open connection to the main plot.
Here's the plot.
Exactly.
If that list gets out into the open, the names of our agents in every country in Eastern Europe will be up for grabs to the highest bidders. If they're exposed, they'll be executed.
I enjoy the storytelling risk taken on their main objective. Not about saving the world, it's just about protecting other spies. It works and we care.
You have lovely eyes. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Even the prepping for the mission hangout is absorbing. Every member of this cast is so freaking good.
Now, I want to know who these people are.
Ha! Using Tom in a mask to play the senator instead of trying to make him look like another actor. Smart play. Oh, and also a prepping for a mission montage is the fastest way to get a Tom Cruise southern accent.
We were living in a democracy the last time I checked.
Hasta lasagna, don't get any on you.
Explosives advice. A fair issue to bring up would be why didn't Jack do all this hacking before the party? And I think it's fair to say that he needed the cover of some kind of event or party to gain access to the embassy. And given the short time frame of this mission, this was probably the only party going on in a 48-hour period. Also, he's got wrestling practice in detention, so cut him some slack. Spies do often have expensive accessories, but I'm thinking a $10,000 Bulgari watch is above Jim Phelps' $62,000 a year salary. So, a little hint that maybe he likes the finer things a tad too much? Dutch tilt used right makes your adrenaline spike like maybe she'll get caught.
That date with Sarah is definitely off.
Of all the weird things that happen in this movie, this has always and will always confuse me. I even read the shooting script and searched through behind the scenes footage to find an answer. I guess the insinuation is that Sarah and Ethan are friends and he's setting Jack up on a date with her? But she's standing right there. Does she not get a say? Anyone on set that day know what happened? Still going to win the playful banter between these three about the thumbprint, especially considering Emilio is uncredited and did this movie as a favor to Tom.
I'm forced to tie him behind one of my best stallions
And drag him around.
my barn for a few days.
Gosh, I've become so jaded to Dutch tilts watching directors use them incorrectly. It's so refreshing to see it used correctly when you don't even really notice it. So here's something fun I never noticed. Ethan enters the elevator shaft wearing a white tuxedo jacket and exits in a black blazer. What happened? Where'd that come from? Well, his jacket is reversible. Oh, brutal. A brutal moment that stuck with my young mind. Speaking of uncredited, what a shock to the audience. Everyone's having a good time, we're in possible missioning, then bang, Coach Bombay's dead. Most of you identified the frame correctly, by the way, and it's one of the fun things that De Palma does that you may have never really cognizantly noticed. He uses first-person camera shots quite a few times. It works to disguise whoever eyes we're looking through and it inflates the suspense. What a ride this mission is after Jack is killed. Ethan can't even catch up as each of his teammates is slaughtered. And if anyone has a better "I'm surprised at all the craziness happening" face, I don't know about it. Not a typical shot length in a 90s action movie. This is another thing you get from Brian De Palma, allowing us to spend some time with a fatigued Ethan as he approaches the restaurant, too rattled to notice that it's all just a little too staged.
Why was there another team?
And up until that moment, most of us had no clue what was really going on. But if you go back, you see the signs were everywhere. Everyone is always looking at the team, doing weird stuff, rarely inconspicuously. We're just all so enamored with the spy stuff you don't notice the obvious. There isn't a person in this restaurant that isn't IMF. That's gotta be good old Barnes, right?
The job he thought Golitsyn was doing tonight.
The list Glitz installed was a decoy.
And the quiet but tension-building score with an awkward, puts-you-on-edge up-angle shot of Kittredge pushing in closer and lower as he starts laying out his accusations.
I can understand you're very upset.
Kittredge, you've never seen me very upset.
But you're about to. In a non-Mission Impossible film, it would be fair to assume that that waiter is dead, which, like I said, they're all IMF agents. So, come to the job. But based on how explosions work in this universe, they'll probably be fine. More importantly, yup. And, let's be honest, Tom Cruise sprints like a champ. Quick improvisational security system. Again, more gripping camera work as we track zoom away from Ethan as if to keep our distance from him as he gets more and more agitated. Usenet, 1996's 4chan. So I've talked about rack focus before, where you pull focus from the foreground to the background, but Brian De Palma uses a technique that's equally intriguing that allows you to have both the foreground and background in focus at the same time. He uses a split diopter that covers half the camera lens in a piece of nearsighted glass. See how far away the Bible actually is? They make it look like the shelf is right above the desk, and he actually moves it closer throughout the scene. He uses it quite a bit. Anytime you see this blurry dissection, that's what's happening. More just mess with your head storytelling, and I promise, last time I point out the Dutch tilt. It's just used so perfectly. Jim is actually alive, but this nightmare is just confirmation for Ethan that he does feel responsible for Jim's death. And then still half asleep, not sure what's real, what's hallucination, Ethan pulls his gun on Claire. Tom Cruise! So many little scenes like this stick with you because of how fully he becomes his character.
Can I trouble you for a match?
Back in first person, and probably the best usage of literally putting us in Ethan's shoes, even if we're most likely more nervous than he is.
Job is not given to quoting scripture in his communications.
So that's a point of contention for some people because the whole Drake Hotel Bible becomes Ethan's first solid clue. But why did Jim need a Bible if he wasn't one for quoting scripture? Just because he didn't quote it doesn't mean he's above a little underhanded sardonicism, using the reference from Job about kings lying in ruin to jab at the intelligence community he'd be exposing. Or it could even be about his own obsolescence, helplessness, and futility.
So you are something of a paradox.
Well, that depends.
On what?
Whether you like a paradox.
Ingratiation.
Tell you what a comfort anonymity can be in my profession. It's like a warm blanket.
I know a lot of YouTubers who agree with that sentiment. By the way, I'm How To Basic. So Vanessa Redgrave is fantastic in this role. She's just the right mix of snarly and sweet, has an air of superiority and British discretion that makes for a fun criminal. But can we talk about how blue her eyes are? Can we have a really blue eyes win? What do you mean no? Well, I'm sure we'll do another Chris Pine movie at some point. Can we also talk about how odd it is that Jean Reno wasn't in last week's video, but he is in this one? Jean Reno is always a win.
I can fly a helicopter right in through the lobby and set it down inside the vault.
What are we downloading?
Information.
What kind?
Profitable.
Clarity.
Relax, Luther. It's much worse than you think.
Sugarcoating. Sweat droplet shadowing. And I love that this alarm going off, while realistically not the reason the fire trucks containing our crew were dispatched, still segues into the mission nicely.
The other guy. 0 body count.
Concern for the innocent and a little uncooperative teamwork. What is that? Katakana? Arabic? Random doodles? Well, I guess it's a good cover. CIA be CIA-ing. Tom Cruise's workout routine. Or at least bicep routine. So that's a thing I need, and I assume much like microscopic GPS trackers, doesn't exist. But that's what movies are for, right? Making you covet things that don't even exist. And now begins one of the tensest set pieces put to film to ever silently make you clench every muscle in your body. Expertly shot and framed, sound design is either non-existent or so on point your heart skips a beat every time a door opens. Honestly, the most offensive thing about this scene is that the floor is mirrored and Dunlow spends quite a bit of time looking down but never notices Ethan's reflection. To his credit, he's 6, so he's not thinking about much else. All of Tom Cruise's crazy stunts and jumps and flips are awe-inspiring, but this is the stuff that really impresses me. While we're showing the gravity of what they're actually stealing, I'd like to take a moment to say, I bet that there are hidden cameras everywhere, but of course Luther and his artificial intelligence RISC chip supercomputer can hack those. Here we get both a rack focus and then the use of a split diopter, and what we learn is that Krieger doesn't like rats. And a motif was born. Ethan Hunt plus danger plus suspended precariously from rope equals win. I mean, this is one of the craziest nail-biting scenes ever put to film. And it looks real because it is real. Tom is really balancing there, spare change in his shoe to keep his head from hitting the floor. Another scene that stuck with me for some reason, and for the longest time I was convinced there was a shot of Krieger actually biting the rat to death. But actually I think he used his knife, which is why it's out at the end.
Let's go. But not too far.
Ha, magic lessons, Joker. But whatever. Ethan is playing Krieger like a fiddle with his overconfidence, even though Krieger had the list the entire time.
Try any sleight of hand with my money, I'll cut your throat.
With what knife? You leave knives everywhere you go. So much shown with just a touch of his cheek. He at the very least suspects Jim at this point, but Claire too? Could she be honeypotting me? Jim's alive. Oh, wait. But the mind games. Is it another nightmare? He's already had one.
Next day, I managed to drag myself back to the safe house. Must have just missed you. Anyway, I checked our aliases.
One thing that comes up as a plot hole is Ethan going back to the safe house after the decoy mission, and I could be wrong, but based on that line,
I checked our aliases.
I get the feeling these individual IMF teams are given a lot of autonomy and everything is need to know, meaning only the members of Jim's IMF team know the locations of safe houses and aliases. It would be way safer that way.
He was at the embassy that night.
Oh, I love me some spy versus spy deducing. Is Ethan really buying it? No, Ethan's just playing along. Also, this is where adolescent Lee got totally lost because Ethan's words don't match his thoughts.
No, I could have done the hand himself.
I do get it now, as I'm sure you all do, but he obviously doesn't want to tip his hand to Jim. This question is directed at Jim, even if he's feigning talking about Kittredge.
Why, Jim? Why?
Ha! Good luck believing she could be a part of it when you imagine her looking into your soul with those doe eyes.
You're an obsolete piece of hardware not worth upgrading. You've got a lousy marriage and 62 grand a year.
I love that in his hubris, Jim actually reveals his own feelings about the disposability of his life, career, and as he confirms before the end, his marriage. Ooh, sneaky, sneaky, sneaky. Just a watch, right? Love the exterior establishing shot of how fast the Terminus is moving. You know someone's going up on top of that thing? Also, Danny Elfman, my man. This score is so 90s, but it really holds up and still gets my blood pumping, barreling into the final act. What? Is that a thing? They used to make keyboards that extended beyond the edge of the laptop? My first laptop was around 1998, I think. Didn't look like that. It did sound like that, though. Maybe a little more crunching.
You okay with that?
Hello.
Carl's brother is suspicious of Marcellus Wallace.
Barnes?
So it just occurred to me, is Barnes a loose reference to Barney from the show? Talk about whitewashing. You know, because his hair is so white. Race jokes! And one last first-person shot showing off their hands since we're currently looking through Jim's eyes. Mask burn.
You earned it.
Infidelity burn. And the watch reveal. Two things here that probably bug some people. Why does Jim let Ethan live? First, he mentions in the train station that no guns are allowed on the train and actually comically says,
Tight security, no guns. Real plus.
and that's why we get these shots of him building a gun from pieces of his briefcase. And you'll notice it's a double barrel that only holds 2 rounds and they're both fired. Now, sure, he could strangle Ethan or otherwise try to kill him, but he's got a helicopter to catch and a Kittredge to avoid. He ain't got no time for slow murder. Apparently, Jim's never seen Ethan very upset either. And now the high-speed train sequence we were promised. Everything about this scene is spectacular. The ridiculous force that Ethan conveys being pushed against him, the way his clothes dance along the top of the train, how bizarrely calm Krieger is. And a second motif was born. Ethan Hunt plus hanging on exterior of high-speed moving vehicle equals win. Also equals the true beginning of the Tom Cruise clinging meme. Like I said, now you're seeing Ethan very upset. He did say he could land a helicopter in the lobby of Fort Knox. Right up until that moment, it's been scary as crap. You assume Ethan probably won't die, but who knows at this point? He's in some real danger. But then, he jumps onto the helicopter like a super spy and the music starts. And you know everything is gonna be alright. He's in control now, just enjoy the ride.
Red light! Green light!
The music should also be a signal to your brain to stop expecting the laws of physics, explosions, eardrums, velocity, wind resistance, internal organs, fire, any of that stuff. Stop expecting those things to exist. Because they don't, and thank goodness, because it leads to a rule of cool defining scene. But I still gotta give Cruise so much credit. The look on his face says, indeed, I've just been exploded onto a train and I should be dead. Also comeuppance, which to be fair was a pretty clean way to go out. Had this movie come out 10 years earlier, it would have been R and Ethan would have shoved the gum into Jim's mouth. I mean, Steve Randall's buddy 2-Bit set him up for it.
Just don't chew it.
I didn't think I'd ever get the chance to say this, but the Cranberries are always a win. Rest in peace, Dolores O'Riordan. Your music spans genre, time, location. It even fits perfectly at the end of a Mission Impossible film.
I'm gonna miss being disreputable.
Well, Luther, if it makes you feel any better, I'll always think of you that way.
Compliments.
Would you consider the cinema of the Caribbean?
More like Australia. But I wanted a sequel then, I'm happy we keep getting sequels now. Also good news, all the fish, lobsters, and that one rat are totally fine. So as I've been hinting, the first time I saw Mission Impossible I was around 11 or 12, and oh man did I immediately fall in love with this movie. It wasn't until a little later that my older and wiser friend Matthew explained the entire movie to me and I learned that I hadn't had a single clue what was actually going on.
You're in Prague?
Right? It may seem like a stretch, but I see that as a testament to the enjoyability and entertainment value of this film. The broad strokes are pretty easy to define. Ethan's a good guy, Jim killed all his friends, and after this first mission, Ethan is generally 1 to 15 steps ahead of everyone and it's amazing. You don't really need to know anything else. But thanks for explaining to me nonetheless, Matt. I really can't even with this movie. I really see this as a masterpiece. I'm not saying the plot is 100% sound or not somewhat convoluted, but everything about its style and atmosphere, every scene gives me joy. I've probably seen it 50 times, but it never gets old and always gives me the feels. The vault infiltration is like a staple of cinema at this point. It's been ironically and unironically parodied more times than I can count. And a big reason that it all works so well, indeed a mostly silent scene with a man dangling on a wire, is that man himself. I don't know if Tom Cruise has ever had a prime, per se. I don't think he's ever not been in his prime, I guess. The 80s were obviously a special time for him, and each decade he seems to hit a new prime. But doggy, something about early 30s Tom Cruise. Like he hit this stride, particularly as Ethan Hunt. But who could have predicted the ridiculous success of this movie and subsequent franchise? Revolving door directors generally don't work as well as, say, Harry Potter films. But I'd venture that Tom Cruise knew, or at least he was going to be responsible for its success or its failure. He was a producer on this movie and had a lot more creative control than most lead actors. He also negotiated his contract to get paid off of gross profits, basically betting his salary on the success of the film, earning $70 million, which is still a ridiculous take 22 years later. And not to keep gushing about Tom Cruise, but come on, you guys know how I feel about him. And really, I know I've already done 2 of his other films, and I guess I may have felt strange about it, but Tom Cruise is always a win. I'll make him earn it in each film, but between this, and this, I think he earned it. Although this scene is why he gets the status. So twitchy. I love the transformation he goes through from the beginning of this film until where we are in the franchise now. But even in this film, he starts out all kinds of cocky before his whole world is blown up, and by the end, he earns the confidence he displays. I'm gonna get more into this as we move through the franchise, but one of my favorite things about Mission Impossible is that no matter the aesthetic and style each director brings to his movie, Ethan Hunt is always pretty much Ethan Hunt. It's a statement about the character as much as the actor being the main through line in these films. Honestly, it's a recipe for success I'm surprised more actors don't push for. So other than Tommy Boy, I already talked about Vanessa Redgrave. She's like a guaranteed W, so no surprise there. Jean Reno had basically just walked off the set of Leon. Oh, and also French Kiss, the best rom-com to ever com-rom. And now he's like the tough guy? As believable and at home in both roles. Reminds me, I gotta do Ronin too. Ving Rhames also earned his part in this franchise by just being so darn likable.
Hi there.
The other actor who always surprises me is Jon Voight. He's so soft-spoken, composed, and, well, fatherly in the beginning. And then once he's exposed, he turns into an action star. And he was 58. I know, Cruise is 56 doing his 6th installment, but still impressive. And I love his turn. I know some of the Die-Hard show fans were upset. Even Peter Graves, the original Jim Phelps, was upset and had no interest in playing the character as a rogue agent. But it's honestly one of the strengths of this film, and sort of puts the show to bed so these characters can move on to something new. And the something new they came up with is something I love. This story gets some flack for being a little convoluted, but most of it is actually set up throughout. From Jim being in control of the elevator to this goofy wrist angle of the person shooting him, to how often it's brought up that Krieger was Claire's pick.
That's not what Claire tells me about you.
Krieger was my call.
And then his knife that should have been a red flag. But really I have to echo the sentiment that so many have said before. Who even cares if this particular plot makes sense? It's such a fun ride with amazing 90s visuals and a Danny Elfman score to match. And at the same time, it's a film that visually swings for the fences at times and connects, or whatever the fruition of that expression would be. Home runs! It hits the ball, yay, go baseball! But I'll probably always love it. I personally like the sequels more than most people, but this film will always have a special, special place in my heart. It's probably the film that made me fall in love with spy thrillers. And probably Tom Cruise. Well, Sneakers is up there too. North by Northwest, but is that even really a spy film? Clear and Present Danger. But no, I think I'm giving credit to Mission Impossible.
They're dead! They're all dead!
But next week, not a Mission Impossible film.